The life sentence handed down to the son of Rickharrison, the famed star of the reality TV show Pawn Stars, has shocked the public and raised serious questions about the darker side behind the glitz and glamour of television fame. Once known to the public as part of the iconic pawn shop family featured on American television, the downfall of a key member of the Harrison family has not only tarnished their reputation but also exposed the conflicts, secrets, and hidden cracks within a seemingly unshakable empire. From a symbol of success and sharp business acumen, the Harrison name is now associated with scandal, crime, and a betrayal of the trust of millions of viewers. If you believe this story matters and want to be part of the conversation about accountability and ethics in the entertainment industry, don't forget to hit like and share this post. Your small action can help raise public awareness and call for greater transparency and responsibility, not just from producers but also from the fans themselves. At 41, Corey Harrison was once a charming and approachable figure, a familiar face on American television. His interactions with customers and down-to-earth personality made him a fan favorite. He was once the embodiment of the American dream, working hard in the family business, rising through the ranks, and achieving fame. But behind that friendly face lies a different story, one of criminal activities that went far beyond the pawn shop walls. The business that brought this family into the spotlight has been hiding a dark secret they tried desperately to keep buried. However, once the FBI got involved, the truth could no longer be ignored. For months, federal agents quietly gathered pieces of evidence. They uncovered that Rickharrison, the head of the family, had been accused of participating in a series of illegal activities, from money laundering to human trafficking. These allegations completely shattered the carefully crafted image of the Harrison family. Once seen as legitimate, hard-working entrepreneurs, their reputation crumbled overnight. The most shocking revelation: Corey Harrison wasn't just a bystander. He was a key figure in the criminal network. He helped build an empire not only based on antiques but also on crime. As the investigation widened, the public's fascination with the Harrison family took a dark turn. Pawn Stars fans watched in shock as their once beloved heroes became entangled in a massive criminal conspiracy. The case spanned multiple states, linking the family to an underground world of crime few could have imagined. Corey's role became increasingly clear as witness testimonies and mounting evidence stacked up against him. Testimonies and financial records revealed that he was directly involved in illegal transactions, many of which were carried out through the pawn shop, which served as a front for criminal activity. Then came the bombshell moment. The FBI raided Rickharrison's multi-million-dollar mansion in Las Vegas. Authorities seized encrypted devices and financial documents that connected the Harrison family to a criminal network. As the investigation continued, it became increasingly clear that the empire they had built was more than just a family business. It was a front for a wide range of illegal operations, meticulously organized and carefully hidden. The scandal sent shock waves through communities across the country. How could the man behind Pawn Stars, a show watched by millions every week, be connected to such a criminal network? Corey, who had spent years in the spotlight, now faces the consequences of his own actions. The evidence against him was undeniable. From the FBI raid to witness testimonies, financial documents traced illegal transactions directly to his name. Encrypted devices further linked him to organized crime networks. In court, Corey Harrison was charged with conspiring with his father to run a criminal empire. The trial played out like a high-stakes crime thriller. As the defense struggled to build a credible case against the growing mountain of evidence, it became clear that Corey wasn't just a pawn in his father's game. He was a key player. He was an integral part of the entire operation. The prosecution painted a damning picture of his deep involvement. However, as the trial unfolded, the public began to ask what led Corey down this dark path. Was he a willing participant, driven by greed and the lure of easy money, or was it Rickharrison who pulled him in, trapping him in a web of deception and manipulation that spanned years? The question of Corey's guilt grew more complex with each passing day of the trial. And the answer seemed to lie deep within the tangled dynamics of the Harrison family. In the end, the jury delivered a harsh verdict. Corey Harrison was found guilty on multiple counts related to his role in the family's criminal empire. The court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The man who was once a beloved television star now faces the harshest consequences for his actions. The sentence marked a dramatic turning point in the saga of the Harrison family. What was once seen as a symbol of success and American culture has now become a cautionary tale about greed, fame, and hidden secrets. Fans who once cheered for Corey now find themselves asking, how could someone once trusted be involved in such a dark underground world? The next question continues to surface: how much did Rickharrison really know? Was he the mastermind, with Corey merely suffering the consequences? As news of the verdict spread, the public reacted strongly and without mercy. Fans were shocked by the truth, feeling betrayed by the family they once idolized. On social media, a flood of comments poured in from viewers who couldn't believe it. They struggled to reconcile the image of hardworking entrepreneurs with the reality of a sophisticated criminal empire. Many wondered how they could have been deceived for so long. This collapse was not only a tragedy for a family but also a wake-up call about the fragility of reputation and the cost of the truth. The story of Corey Harrison's conviction serves as a profound warning. It shows just how thin the line is between public perception and personal guilt. The consequences of wrong choices and the darker side of fame are sometimes unpredictable. But it's also a story of lost redemption. A man who once had everything only to lose it all because of the very empire that had lifted him up. Corey Harrison's fall is filled with painful irony. The empire he helped build is also the place that buried his future. That empire was built from small transactions, from success carefully accumulated piece by piece. But in a world where fame and fortune are fleeting, just one moment in the spotlight is enough to change a destiny forever. At the heart of that empire is Rickharrison, the father, the founder, the leader, and perhaps the one who pulled the entire family into the darkness. He made a name for himself as the quick-witted, charismatic owner of Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, the central star of the hit show Pawn Stars on the History Channel. The television show Pawn Stars, which premiered in 2009, became an overnight success. It turned a small pawn shop in Las Vegas into a global brand. Fans worldwide followed the daily hustle of Rick, Corey, and their team as they explored the world of rare antiques, classic memorabilia, and historical artifacts. But behind the camera lens, a much darker operation was unfolding, one that would lead to the collapse of the Harrison family empire. Rick Harrison's path to success was not paved with gold. In fact, it was far from the lavish lifestyle he would one day come to live. Born in Lexington, North Carolina, Rick was no stranger to hardship. His father was a soldier, so the family frequently moved. When Rick was a teenager, he found himself living in Las Vegas. It was here that Rick began working in the pawn industry, learning the basics of buying, selling, and appraising items. He quickly saw an opportunity to open his own pawn shop. By 1989, he made that dream a reality. The real turning point for Rick came in 2009 when Pawn Stars premiered on the History Channel. The show immediately captivated the public's imagination with its unique blend of history, human interest, and treasure hunting. From a small pawn shop, Rick turned his business into a household name. Suddenly, he became a star in his own television series. Alongside him was his son Corey, who had worked at the pawn shop for many years. Although Corey was often portrayed as the straightforward man, occasionally clashing with his father's witty remarks, it was clear he had inherited Rick's business acumen and personality. The family-friendly image of Pawn Stars painted a picture of a legitimate, hard-working business, a father-son duo who built an empire from the ground up. However, what the audience didn't see behind the camera was a much darker world. As Pawn Stars' success soared, so did Rick Harrison's wealth and influence. The man who once struggled to make a living now lives in a sprawling mansion in the most upscale area of Las Vegas. Corey also became more powerful than ever. He was no longer just the son of a star. He had become a key figure in the family business, managing operations and making deals that helped propel the success of the show. However, as Corey's role grew, so did the influence of shady figures in the Harrison family's life. Along with the growing fame of the pawn shop, they became involved in larger, more lucrative deals, from rare artifacts and historical items to dealings with celebrities' memorabilia, art, and artifacts. They handled transactions worth millions of dollars. The pawn business, once operating quietly, had now become the center of attention. It attracted not only legitimate customers but also those looking to exploit the business for illegal purposes. The allure of easy money proved too strong for many. It was during this time that the connection between Rick, Corey, and criminal organizations began to form. As the business grew, the deals became more complicated. The line between legitimate business and illegal activity started to blur. Soon after, the FBI began to take notice of the Harrison family. As early as 2012, law enforcement quietly launched an investigation. Suspicion centered around money laundering and the trafficking of stolen goods. It took a long time, but once enough evidence had been gathered, the true scale of the operation became clear. The pawn shop was now suspected of being a front for underground activities. They were believed to be working with organized crime networks, trading everything from stolen artwork to illegal weapons. The pawn shop, once a place for exchanging valuable goods, had now become a mask for criminal activity. Corey, who once relished fame, was now caught up in a dangerous web. A dark network threatened to engulf both him and his family. Despite growing suspicions, the Harrison family continued to maintain their legal facade. The public still saw Rick and Corey as symbols of hard work and determination. However, behind that image lay a much more complex and darker truth. They were the center of a criminal organization far larger than a mere pawn shop. The Harrison family was accused of working with organized criminals. They were suspected of laundering money through high-value transactions. Not only that, but they were also believed to be facilitating the interstate transportation of stolen goods. The glitz of reality television was just a facade. Corey Harrison, once beloved on television, was now caught in the middle of it all. The investigation deepened, and evidence began pointing toward Corey. He was identified as playing a central role in managing the illegal transactions. While Rick Harrison was the face of the operation, Corey was the one coordinating behind the scenes. He acted as the bridge between the criminal organization and the pawn shop. Individuals involved in shady activities frequently visited the shop. The deeper the FBI investigated, the clearer it became. The Harrison empire was built on more than just antiques. Behind the rare items was a network of risky illegal transactions. Not only Rick but Corey was also deeply involved in the criminal activities. The father and son duo, once seen as the ideal role models on television, were now at the center of a scandal. The reputation that once brought them success had now become a fatal blow. The very work that made them famous was now turning around to destroy them from within. Corey Harrison, the character who once captured the public's heart, was no longer the golden boy. He had become an accomplice in a criminal organization with far-reaching influence. His role was no longer that of an assistant. He was a direct participant, making decisions. And those secrets were about to be exposed in the most dramatic way. As the Harrison family's fame and wealth continued to spread, the suspicions grew larger with it. What started as a small pawn shop in Las Vegas, built on Rick Harrison and his family's dreams, had grown into a multi-million-dollar business. However, with the rise in wealth and influence, the inevitable attention of law enforcement began to surface. The FBI, always vigilant of illegal activities hidden behind the facade of legitimate business, began focusing on the Pawn Stars empire. What they uncovered over the course of 16 months was nothing short of shocking. The FBI's investigation into the Harrison family's pawn shop was initially triggered by a routine audit. Suspicious financial transactions within the business had caught the attention of investigators. What initially appeared to be harmless transactions involving antiques and collectibles soon became a major concern. On the surface, Pawn Stars was just a reality TV show capturing the thrill of bargaining over rare items and priceless artifacts. But beneath that shiny exterior lay a network of criminal activity that the public knew nothing about. The investigation began quietly, with federal agents discreetly combing through the financial records of the gold and silver pawn shop. At first, They were only looking into simple allegations of money laundering and the sale of stolen goods. However, as the investigation deepened, its scope began to expand far beyond what was initially anticipated. New clues kept emerging, indicating the pawn shop's involvement in shady activities. An underground world began to surface beneath the glossy exterior of a globally renowned brand. What started as an investigation into financial activities quickly turned into a full-blown probe into organized crime. Agents discovered that the pawn shop seemed to have become a hub for numerous illegal transactions. One of the first pieces of evidence that drew the FBI's attention was a series of unusually large cash transactions. These sums of money were deposited into the shop's accounts, but there was no accompanying paperwork. In the pawn industry, cash transactions are not uncommon, but the amounts involved in these deals far exceeded the actual value of the items. The discrepancies raised significant questions for the investigators. They found that it wasn't just small items, but even goods worth hundreds of thousands of dollars were not properly documented. Additionally, many transactions were carried out without official paperwork or receipts. This violated key financial regulations and federal laws. Some high-value items were confirmed to have been moved across state lines without the proper records. Many of these items also lacked clear provenance, raising suspicions that they were stolen goods. The FBI concluded that these weren't mere business oversights but could be intentional efforts to conceal illegal activities. The lack of transparency in the accounting records indicated systematic financial manipulation. These findings elevated the investigation to a new level, involving multiple federal and local agencies. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that the transactions were not the result of poor accounting or simple mistakes. The FBI began to piece together a larger, more organized picture. They discovered that Rickharrison had facilitated transactions with individuals linked to organized crime, including money laundering and arms trafficking networks. The pawn shop had become a front for illegal transactions. Rick, whether knowingly or unknowingly, played the role of an intermediary in this criminal network. As evidence piled up, the investigation shifted focus to Corey Harrison. Corey, who was increasingly taking on a larger role in the family business, began to emerge as a central figure. As the pawn shop grew, Corey's influence over the operations became more prominent. While Rick was the face of the TV show, Corey was the one actually running things behind the scenes. Federal agents discovered that Corey was deeply involved in managing and executing shady transactions. This included coordinating with criminal organizations to carry out illegal transactions. Clearly, Corey was not just an heir. He was an active part of the criminal network. The situation became more serious when a new twist emerged in the investigation. The FBI discovered evidence of human trafficking linked to the gold and silver pawn shop. Tracing the flow of money, agents found that the shop was being used as a payment hub for stolen goods. Even more concerning, some of the payments were tied to human trafficking operations across state lines. This discovery shocked the investigators, increasing the urgency of the case. For months, the FBI quietly built a case against the Harrison family. They conducted secret surveillance, recorded conversations, analyzed data, and tracked communications. What they gathered was not only concerning but also pivotal. Agents discovered encrypted emails and messages detailing secret transactions. The content revealed links between the Harrison family and major criminal organizations across the country. The pawn shop had been used as a tool for money laundering, trafficking stolen goods, and facilitating human trafficking. One of the most surprising findings was the role of the employees within the system. Although most employees were loyal to the Harrisons, some began to notice unusual activities. They witnessed strange transactions involving expensive items with unclear origins. From unexplained cash exchanges to untraceable goods, a few employees began questioning the transparency of the business. Some of them became whistleblowers, providing confidential information to the FBI. As a result, investigators gained a clearer picture of what was happening behind the store's doors. Despite being under surveillance, the Harrison family continued to maintain the appearance that nothing was amiss. They continued filming episodes of Pawn Stars, appearing on television as energetic father and son figures. But beneath the spotlight, the FBI was steadily building its case. New connections kept emerging, making the investigation more complex. The deeper they dug, the clearer the links between the Harrisons and the criminal underworld became. The Harrisons had become so entangled with criminal organizations that they were inseparable. They weren't just unwitting accomplices. They were directly involved in facilitating illegal activities. For months, the FBI was in a race against time to prevent the destruction of evidence. Finally, after all the pieces came together, they were ready to act. The time had come when the FBI realized the full extent of the Harrison family's criminal activities. They were believed to be behind one of the largest money laundering schemes in Las Vegas history, and it was all cleverly disguised under the guise of a famous pawn shop. The Harrisons had moved millions of dollars through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts. This revelation shook the investigation, and it became clear that the Harrison empire was built not only on hard work but also on corruption and crime. With this crucial information in hand, the FBI was ready to make an arrest. The investigation had reached its climax, and it was time for the Harrisons to face the consequences of their actions. The FBI's investigation into Rickharrison's pawn shop and the illegal empire it concealed reached a pivotal moment in the summer of 2025. After months of secret surveillance, financial tracking, and witness testimony, authorities were led to a decisive point. They executed a high-profile raid on Rickharrison's multi-million-dollar mansion in Las Vegas. It was a dramatic scene that would ultimately expose the entire criminal operation of the family and shake the public's trust in their beloved Pawn Stars star. Rickharrison's mansion was not just a residence but a symbol of the success and empire he had built. Located in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Las Vegas, the sprawling estate was a complete architectural marvel with luxurious, refined details. The vast grounds and panoramic views of the city reflected the American dream, showcasing hard work, determination, and the success that had been achieved. But for the FBI, it had become a symbol of something far darker, the heart of a criminal empire. For months, federal agents had been gathering intelligence and compiling evidence against the Harrison family. They had tapped into financial records, analyzed encrypted communications, and even conducted undercover operations to uncover the vast criminal networks surrounding the gold and silver pawn shop. What they uncovered shocked the pawn shop. A business that seemed legitimate had been used as a front for money laundering, trafficking stolen goods, and even human trafficking. Rick Harrison, Corey Harrison, and others involved had become deeply entangled in these criminal activities, facilitating transactions that spanned across states and were linked to organized crime syndicates. The raid on Rick Harrison's mansion was the moment the FBI had been waiting for. Armed with a search warrant, surveillance footage, and a wealth of evidence, the agents were ready to strike. They knew they needed the evidence to convict Harrison, his family members, and their criminal accomplices who were hiding within the walls of that mansion. It was the headquarters of a criminal network that had been operating secretly for a long time. On the morning of the raid, FBI agents stormed the mansion with military precision. It was still early, and the house was quiet. But the operation was anything but subtle. The agents surrounded the house, blocking all exits and cutting off any possible escape routes. The team, which included armed SWAT members, had planned the operation down to the smallest detail, knowing that any mistake could lead to the destruction of crucial evidence or even violence. The Harrison family was very famous, and it was unclear how they would react to the confrontation. When the agents stormed the mansion, they saw the sprawling, lavish estate that the public had imagined. However, it was the basement and private offices that would prove to be the key to unlocking the entire criminal operation of the Harrison family. In the secluded areas of the mansion, hidden behind expensive walls, luxurious furniture, and decorations, the FBI discovered a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Among the first items recovered were encrypted devices, laptops, hard drives, and smartphones that Rick and Corey Harrison had used to conduct their illegal transactions. These devices contained financial records, emails, and transaction histories directly linking the Harrison family to criminal organizations. The agents also discovered a stash of documents detailing secret deals and business transactions involving millions of dollars in cash. It was clear that these were not just simple pawn shop transactions but complex money laundering schemes stretching across borders and continents. Perhaps the most shocking discovery came in a locked room beneath the mansion's wine cellar. Inside this secret room, FBI agents found stacks of documents, some detailing human trafficking activities. Some of the documents related to the transportation of illegal goods, while others pointed to dark transactions involving missing persons under mysterious circumstances. The FBI quickly realized that Rick and Corey Harrison were not just facilitators of financial transactions. They were also part of a larger organized network spanning multiple criminal enterprises. These records were crucial as they revealed the extent of the Harrisons' involvement in illegal activities, including links to international arms dealers and organized crime families. The pawnbroker family had built a public image based on historical transactions. Now it had been exposed as an integral part of a much darker and more deadly world. The raid didn't stop at the mansion itself. FBI agents simultaneously conducted searches at several other properties linked to the Harrisons, including storage units, other homes, and even businesses tied to their criminal activities. The investigation uncovered numerous fronts used to conceal their illegal transactions, and the agents were determined not to miss a single detail. The raids took place simultaneously to prevent any evidence from being destroyed, ensuring that the Harrison family would not escape the full force of the law. As the agents continued their search, they found evidence of the pawn shop's involvement in selling stolen artifacts and rare valuable items. Many of these irreplaceable items had passed through the gold and silver pawn shop without any questions asked. Some of these items were believed to have been taken from private museum collections and even from individuals who had been tricked into selling their valuable possessions. The role of the pawnbroker in these activities was nothing short of alarming. The Harrisons built their empire not only through legal transactions but also by exploiting the very customers they once served. News of the raid quickly spread, sending shock waves through the Pawn Stars fan community. The public, who had followed the Harrisons for years as they interacted with customers, haggled over deals, and shared the excitement of discovering rare treasures, now found that the very business that made them stars was under investigation for being involved in some of the most heinous crimes viewers could imagine. People who once admired the Harrisons for their wit and sharp business acumen were now grappling with the horrifying truth that the family they trusted were not the legitimate entrepreneurs they portrayed on television. By the end of the raid, the FBI had seized hundreds of pieces of evidence that would form the backbone of the criminal case against the Harrisons. These discoveries not only implicated Rick and Corey Harrison but also cast a dark shadow over the entire Pawn Stars operation. For those who had spent years watching the show, it was impossible not to feel the utter disappointment as they reflected on the memories of the Harrison family. The public had been deceived, and the empire that once seemed untouchable was now being torn apart. After the raid, authorities quickly arrested Rick Harrison, Corey Harrison, and several associates, their names now synonymous with a criminal empire extending far beyond the pawn shop business. As the investigation continued, more details emerged about the scope of the Harrison family's illegal activities. Activities that were once praised for their sharp business sense and on-screen appeal. Now they were facing the harsh reality of their involvement in a criminal network that had cost them everything. As the investigation into the criminal activities of the Harrison family deepened, one bigger question loomed above all others. What role did Corey Harrison, Rick Harrison's once beloved son, play in the massive criminal empire that had operated under the guise of the gold and silver pawn shop for years? Corey was portrayed as a charming, down-to-earth character on Pawn Stars, someone viewers could relate to with his wit, straightforwardness, and humorous interactions with customers. This made him a fan favorite. If you believe that transparency and accountability in the entertainment industry matter, don't forget to hit like and share this post. Your actions will not only help spread awareness but also send a strong message that we do not tolerate deception or compromise with wrongdoing. Join the conversation and help change the way reality television impacts society. A single like, a share, could be the first step in creating a more awake and proactive community in protecting ethical values. But behind the scenes, his actions were far from innocent. Corey Harrison began working in the family business at a young age, spending most of his life in the pawn shop, learning the ropes from his father Rick and becoming an essential part of the operation featured on the show. Corey was often seen as someone who could broker a deal or offer a fair price to customers looking to sell their valuable items. He was portrayed as having a keen eye for rare items and a talent for haggling. Over time, as the business grew, Corey's responsibilities began to blur the lines between legal and illegal activities. While Rickharrison became the public face of the Pawn Stars empire, Corey's role within the business expanded along with the success of the show. More and more high-profile clients began visiting the Harrisons, and their reasons for coming went beyond just pawn transactions. Many of these clients had connections to organized crime, seeing the pawn shop as an opportunity to launder money, trade stolen goods, and carry out deals that could easily be hidden behind the legitimate transactions being filmed for the show. In this environment, Corey's deeper involvement in criminal activities began to take root. While his public image on the show portrayed him as an upright businessman, the reality was far more complex. Testimonies and evidence presented during the trial revealed that Corey played a key role in managing many of the illegal activities carried out through the pawn shop. He was not just Rickharrison's son. He was a central figure in the criminal network that had used the business as a front for money laundering, trafficking in stolen goods, and most shockingly, human trafficking. The FBI investigation revealed that Corey was the primary point of contact for several criminal organizations that used the pawn shop to facilitate their illegal activities. While Rickharrison was often the public face of the business, it was Corey who handled the logistics behind the scenes. He was the one managing the transactions, ensuring that the money changed hands and making sure that goods were moved without raising suspicion. His involvement in these transactions was not passive. Corey was an active participant, directing the movement of goods and money to conceal the criminal operations. One of the most crucial pieces of evidence linking Corey to the criminal activities came from the encrypted devices seized during the FBI raid. These devices contained communication logs, emails, and encrypted messages that directly implicated Corey in illegal transactions. The evidence painted a clear picture of Corey as the mastermind behind many of the unlawful activities occurring at the gold and silver pawn shop. The messages detailed negotiations with criminal organizations, instructions on how to handle large sums of illicit money, and even exchanges discussing the logistics of transporting stolen goods. The role of Corey in the family business went far beyond managing daily operations. As the store expanded, the scope of illegal transactions grew as well. One of the most shocking revelations was Corey's direct involvement in human trafficking. While Pawn Stars portrayed the store as a place for individuals to sell heirlooms or rare artifacts, in reality, it became a front for far more sinister activities. The FBI uncovered evidence showing Corey coordinated the sale of people as if they were items on a pawn ticket. It was revealed that he facilitated the trafficking of women and children for forced labor and sexual exploitation. This revelation sent shock waves through the entire investigation. Corey, the son of a television celebrity and business mogul, was directly involved in crimes that destroyed the lives of his victims. Often vulnerable individuals, they had been lured into the orbit of pawn shops under the guise of legitimate transactions. Corey's involvement in these heinous crimes shattered any illusion of his innocence. The man once known for his humor and charm transformed into a villain in the eyes of the public. As the evidence was presented, the public image that the Harrison family had meticulously built over the years crumbled completely. The criminal activities they had engaged in were not merely personal acts, but part of a larger organized crime empire. The true nature of their actions was now revealed. Corey was a key player in a network of human exploitation and suffering. While Corey had once been an eager participant in his family's business, his deep involvement in these criminal activities painted a much darker picture. The evidence uncovered by the FBI made it clear that Corey had fully embraced the darker side of the illegal business. He chose personal gain over the values of integrity and honesty that he had once publicly championed. As the investigation progressed, it became evident that Corey had intentionally facilitated illegal transactions. He helped launder money and transport stolen goods. These actions turned Corey into a central figure in the criminal underworld. Corey's involvement went beyond merely handling transactions. He was also responsible for managing the shop's relationships with criminal clientele. These customers were not just individuals looking to sell their old jewelry, but people with ties to criminal organizations. They sought to use the pawn shop as a means of moving illicit goods and money. Corey acted as an intermediary between these criminals and the Harrison family business, providing them with a cover to carry out their shady activities. His participation went far beyond simple transactions. He became a key link in the criminal network. Corey had become a trusted figure in the underground criminal world. He was the bridge between the organized crime world and the public-facing pawn empire. The severity of Corey's actions became clearer during the trial. The evidence against him piled up, and it was nearly irrefutable. His role was not just that of a passive participant, but an active and willing accomplice. He had used his business acumen to further the interests of criminal organizations. While maintaining the facade of a responsible businessman, Corey had helped build a criminal empire. This criminal empire is slowly being exposed in court with each trial session. Corey's defense team struggled to provide a reasonable explanation for his actions. His illegal activities had been thoroughly documented, and there was almost no room left for doubt. The prosecution painted a damning picture of a man who not only deliberately violated the law but did so for personal gain. As more evidence mounted, it became clear that Corey played a central role in the collapse of his family's empire. He would now have to face the consequences of his actions. The courtroom was packed as the trial of Corey Harrison officially began. Reporters, spectators, and members of the Harrison family were all in attendance. The public's interest in the case was understandable. Once beloved by millions for his friendly demeanor and witty sense of humor, Corey now stood before the court. As the heir to a famous pawn shop, he had once symbolized legacy and success. However, the dark side of the family business had led him to this harsh turning point. Now he must face the full weight of the law. As the trial unfolded, the world was introduced to the shocking truth about Corey's involvement in illegal activities that led to the destruction of his family. The prosecution wasted no time in presenting their case against Corey. Having gathered a vast amount of evidence, the weight of this evidence was made abundantly clear in their opening statements. The key to their argument was simple: Corey Harrison was an active participant in the criminal empire. He intentionally facilitated illegal transactions, coordinating with organized criminal groups. These activities had been taking place right under the public's nose for years. The prosecutors outlined the various criminal activities Corey had been involved in, from money laundering to trafficking in stolen goods. The most alarming accusation was the involvement in human trafficking. They presented the jury with convicting evidence, including encrypted messages, financial documents, and testimony from whistleblowers. Additionally, there were statements from law enforcement officers. The prosecution painted a picture of a man deeply embedded in the world of organized crime. Corey had used his position in the family business to facilitate and conceal illegal activities for years. One of the most critical pieces of evidence came from the testimony of federal agents who conducted the investigation. They detailed how they traced illegal money flows and goods through the Harrison family's pawn shop. The agents explained how they uncovered a network of organized crime that exploited the store as a front for money laundering and smuggling. Their testimony was compelling, describing how far Corey had gone to protect the business, even if it meant directly participating in criminal activities. These revelations left the jury stunned. Perhaps the most shocking testimony came from a whistleblower who had worked at the gold and silver pawn shop. A former loyal employee of the Harrison family shared firsthand accounts of witnessing illegal transactions behind closed doors. He described large sums of money being exchanged without any proper documentation, along with strange customers selling rare items. The employee recounted how unusual requests were made by Corey and Rickharrison. Over time, he began to suspect something was wrong. Eventually, he contacted the FBI and provided crucial information that helped propel the investigation forward. The information provided by the whistleblower helped form the foundation of the case against Corey and his father. On the other hand, the defense struggled to present a credible strategy. They seemed to focus on discrediting the prosecution's witnesses and questioning the integrity of the investigation. The defense attorneys argued that Corey was unaware of the full extent of the criminal activities behind the scenes. They claimed that Corey was merely a pawn, manipulated and controlled by his father Rickharrison. However, this argument lacked the weight to counter the overwhelming and clear evidence presented by the prosecution. As the trial continued, more details about the inner workings of the Harrison family's criminal enterprise came to light. The prosecution presented evidence of Corey's direct involvement in illegal transactions. They demonstrated that he had communicated and cooperated with organized crime syndicates. Furthermore, Corey was shown to have negotiated deals and even been present during the transfer of stolen goods. Everything was carried out under the guise of the pawnshop business. These pieces of evidence clearly indicated that Corey not only knew about the criminal activities but was actively participating in them. One of the most crucial moments in the trial came when the prosecution presented a series of encrypted messages between Corey and one of the criminal organizations. These messages detailed the logistics of illegal transactions, including instructions on how to transfer large sums of money and items across state borders without arousing suspicion. The messages were clear and direct, showing that Corey was deeply involved in directing criminal activities. The prosecution used these communications to prove that Corey was not an innocent bystander. Instead, he was an active participant who fully understood and engaged in the illegal operations. This argument undermined the defense's claims, making their case seem increasingly weak. As the defense attempted to present their case, they sought to place much of the blame on Rickharrison. Their argument suggested that Rick was the true mastermind behind the criminal empire, while Corey was merely manipulated into participating. They claimed that Rick had exploited his paternal influence to draw his son into these illegal activities. However, this argument quickly faltered in the face of overwhelming evidence presented by the prosecution. The jury was not swayed by the defense's attempt to shift responsibility. It was clear that they viewed Corey as an active participant who was fully aware of his role in the crimes. He was no longer seen as the innocent heir many had once believed him to be. Throughout the trial, media coverage was intense and continuous. Journalists from across the United States flocked to Las Vegas to report on this shocking case. Pawn Stars, one of America's most beloved reality TV shows, was now the subject of widespread criticism. Fans who had once admired Corey for his friendly demeanor and practicality were now deeply disappointed. They could not fathom that the man they had watched on screen could be involved in such a criminal network. The case had turned into a real-life drama that captivated the entire nation. When the prosecution rested its case, the defense had little left to say. They failed to discredit the witnesses, and their attempt to paint Corey as a pawn in Rick's game convinced no one. Skepticism toward the defense's argument hung heavy in the courtroom. The evidence against Corey was overwhelming, especially the testimony from federal agents and the whistleblower. Together, they painted a damning picture. The final moments of the trial unfolded in a charged atmosphere. Both sides prepared for their closing arguments. The prosecution delivered a powerful closing statement. They emphasized the severity of Corey's actions and the harm he caused the community. According to them, Corey not only tarnished his family's reputation but also directly contributed to the suffering of victims, particularly in human trafficking activities. The prosecution's message was clear: Corey Harrison must be held accountable under the law. He committed crimes, and now it was time to face the consequences. The jury began deliberating in a tense atmosphere. Clearly, Corey's fate was sealed. He was the central figure in one of the biggest criminal cases in Las Vegas in years. The evidence against him was too overwhelming to dispute. The question was no longer whether Corey was guilty but how the justice system would deal with him. The courtroom fell into a suffocating silence as the jury returned to deliver their verdict. After days of trial, hours of testimony, and mountains of evidence, the moment of truth had finally arrived. All eyes turned to Corey Harrison. Corey Harrison, 41, son of Rick Harrison, the face of Pawn Stars, stood at the defendant's table with his fate hanging in the balance. The public once adored him as the affable heir to the famous pawn shop. But now they watched as he faced the consequences of his criminal actions. As the jury filed into the courtroom and took their seats, tension enveloped the room. All eyes fixed on Corey's stoic face and the team of lawyers beside him. The verdict would mark the end of a scandalous chapter in the Harrison family's history. The family members were anxiously awaiting the announcement for Corey. This was the moment that would shape the rest of his life. No turning back. The events of the past few weeks had now reached their climax. The judge, a stern figure who had presided over the entire trial, stood and addressed the room. She called for the jury to deliver their verdict. As she spoke, the air thickened with anticipation. The court clerk shouted, "We the jury find the defendant Corey Harrison guilty on all charges." The words echoed through the courtroom. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Corey stood motionless, his face expressionless, but the weight of the moment was clearly sinking in. His hands trembled slightly as he awaited what came next. The reality of what had transpired over the past months was finally undeniable. His involvement in a vast network of criminal enterprises had been confirmed. The public image he had so carefully crafted was now officially shattered. As the verdict was announced, the prosecution rose to deliver a statement on the severity of Corey's crimes. The prosecutor, who had led the case with unrelenting precision, began outlining the devastating consequences of Corey's actions. This defendant, the prosecutor declared, was not merely complicit in the crimes initiated by his father but an active participant. The offenses included human trafficking, money laundering, and the distribution of stolen goods. Corey didn't just turn a blind eye. He orchestrated and profited from the crimes. Corey's actions had fueled a cycle of exploitation and corruption that spanned years. The prosecutor paused, letting the gravity of their words sink into the room's tense atmosphere. Once a television star, today he is a man who has destroyed not only his own life but the lives of many others. The public's trust had been profoundly betrayed. Now Corey faced the inevitable consequences. As the prosecutor concluded, justice must be served. There was no room for leniency. Once a pillar of public trust, under the weight of the exposed criminal activities, the family's image, once synonymous with integrity, collapsed. What seemed unbreakable was crushed by the burden of truth. Worst of all, the public no longer believed in Rick's innocence. The damage wasn't just to their reputation but also financial. The once thriving business, the heart of Pawn Stars, now faced the threat of collapse. The show, once among the most watched, had become a tarnished memory. FBI revelations stripped away the admiration viewers once held, as they could no longer separate the captivating world of antiques on screen from the real-life organized crime. Trust was shattered, jeopardizing the sustainability of the Harrison brand. No one wanted to support a business tainted by criminal infamy. The pawn shop, a symbol of American family enterprise, now sat under intense public scrutiny. Customers who once eagerly visited now hesitated to step into the televised storefront. Legal challenges piled up. From financial investigations to the looming threat of civil lawsuits, no one was certain if the Harrisons could retain ownership or would be forced to sell to cover legal fees. Potential restitution for victims or liabilities from Corey's crimes hung overhead. The situation left everyone grappling with an uncertain future. For Corey's immediate family, the consequences were equally devastating. The emotional toll of the trial was a shock they could hardly overcome. His wife, who stood by him throughout the proceedings, now faced the painful reality that her husband would spend his life in prison. She not only lost her partner but was thrust into an unwanted spotlight. Corey's children, too young to fully grasp the situation, would grow up in the shadow of a name now synonymous with crime. The family, once a picture of unity, now faced quiet disintegration and deep hurt. The family image, once admired by the public, now lay shattered under the weight of truth. In the days and weeks following the trial, the media continued to dig into every detail. TV shows, podcasts, online articles, and talk shows seized the opportunity to dissect the saga. They discussed the charges, the shocking evidence, and the psychological toll on the family. The story was no longer confined to the courtroom. It had spilled into popular culture. Pawn Stars wasn't just impacted. It was dragged down with the reputation of those who built it. The future of the Harrison family remains a big question mark. Rick, once the face of entrepreneurial spirit and American tradition, now must find a way to salvage what's left. He faces a nearly impossible task, restoring a shattered reputation. The business could shut down. Assets might be sold off. But the hardest part is regaining trust. Meanwhile, Corey will spend the rest of his life behind bars. For Rick and the rest of the family, what they face is only the beginning. The emotional, financial, and reputational damage will linger long after the trial has ended. As the dust settled and the Harrison family began to come to terms with Corey's sentence, the world turned to reflect on the rise and fall of the Harrison empire. From humble beginnings, they rose to fame and fortune, an inspiring tale of the American dream. But behind the spotlights and cameras was a different reality, criminal activity lurking beneath the surface, quietly undermining everything. When the truth was revealed, the seemingly unshakable empire crumbled in an instant. Corey Harrison's story serves as a cautionary tale. Fame and fortune, left unchecked, can be a double-edged sword. The consequences of living outside the law are never inescapable. The public reaction to the fall of Corey Harrison and his family empire was a media firestorm. For years, Pawn Stars had been a fixture in the entertainment lives of millions of families. Fans followed the Harrisons' journey through the world of antiques, deals, and the strange stories behind each item. Rick and Corey became familiar, relatable, and beloved television characters. But the shocking revelations of the case shattered that image. Viewers felt betrayed by the people they had trusted, and the loss is something many have yet to come to terms with. The initial reaction was one of shock and deep disbelief. Loyal fans could not believe that Corey, who had made them laugh with his wit and friendliness, could be involved in money laundering and human trafficking. Forums and social media were flooded with comments of shock, disappointment, and confusion. Many wondered if something had been misinterpreted or if Corey had been the victim of a conspiracy. Some held out hope that things would be cleared up, that there would be a turnaround. But as the evidence continued to emerge, even the most loyal began to lose faith. Another segment of the public was unforgiving. For them, the revelation that Corey had been involved in a criminal network was a blatant betrayal. They were outraged not just by the crime but by the affection and admiration they had once shown him. Those who had admired his business savvy now denounced him as a manipulator. When details of his human trafficking, a crime that preyed on the vulnerable, came to light, the outrage reached fever pitch. The internet was flooded with condemnation from viewers and longtime fans alike. What had once been a strong belief was now a scourge. The media frenzy that engulfed the trial and its aftermath turned a lighthearted reality show into a symbol of corruption and scandal. Pawn Stars, once a show meant to entertain, became synonymous with organized crime. The public began to question everything they saw on screen. How much was real? How much was staged for the cameras? The Harrisons, once admired for their sincerity and simplicity, were now viewed with suspicion, and it was a rift that would be difficult to mend in a once beloved show. Not only the audience but also the experts and the media were quick to speak out. Pop culture analysts and entertainment industry experts expressed deep disappointment. How could a show with such a huge influence like Pawn Stars hide such a dark reality? Critics said. The show deliberately glamorized the pawn industry, avoiding its dark side. The Harrison family was built as devoted fathers and sons, but behind it could be a system that exploited and profited from vulnerable people. The gap between the image on television and the truth is what deeply hurt the public. The show once focused on the thrill of finding rare items, the hilarious negotiations, and the quirky customers. But now all of that is overshadowed by the grim reality. Behind the famous pawn shop door lies a network of organized crime. Pawn Stars was once the American dream, a successful family business, an inspirational story. Now it's a cautionary tale about the dark side of fame, reality TV, and public trust. And whether the show continues or not, its image has been forever changed for audiences around the world. For some critics, the scandal exposed the ugly underbelly of reality television, where the pursuit of fame and fortune can sometimes lead to unethical, even criminal behavior. The criminal activities uncovered within the Harrison family empire also sparked a broader conversation about the connection between reality television and real-life crime. Corey's defense attorney sat in silence, with no arguments left to sway the outcome. All attempts to mitigate his responsibility had proven futile. They had once tried to paint Corey as a victim, coerced by his father into a web of deceit. But the prosecution's evidence had dismantled that narrative entirely. Corey Harrison was no passive bystander. He was fully aware and actively involved in the illegal activities conducted right at the family's pawn shop. The entire room now waited for him to speak. The room fell into complete silence as it was Corey's turn to speak. His defense attorney whispered something briefly. Then Corey stepped forward. His face was solemn, his eyes subdued. In a voice barely above a whisper, Corey began, "I am deeply sorry for my actions. I never meant to hurt anyone, but I understand the consequences I've caused." He continued, his voice trembling slightly, "I wish I could undo the damage, but I know I can't. I have no excuses for my behavior. I take full responsibility for my role in these crimes." Corey said, his voice choking, "I've let down my family, hurt my fans, and betrayed everyone who ever believed in me." He paused for a moment before concluding, "I've disappointed my father, and I'll live with that regret for the rest of my life. I beg for mercy, but I understand that justice must be served." The courtroom remained utterly silent. Corey's words seemed to hang in the air, but would his remorse change anything? The question lingered, could that apology erase the profound betrayal he had caused? As the son of the founder of a reality TV empire, did Corey have any chance at redemption? The answer seemed unlikely. The judge, who had closely followed the entire trial, finally spoke. She had listened intently to statements from both sides. With a calm but unmistakably stern demeanor, she began her sentencing. "Corey Harrison," she said, "you have been found guilty of participating in an organized criminal network. Your actions and those of your family have caused severe harm to many individuals," her voice steady. "The public's trust has been shattered beyond repair." She paused, letting each word sink in for those present. "You stand before this court as an active participant in criminal activities for personal gain," she continued without hesitation. "There can be no leniency in this case, as the severity of your conduct cannot be overstated." Her eyes locked onto Corey. "You have shown complete disregard for the law." After a moment of silence, she proceeded to the sentencing. "Given the severity of your crimes and the harm you have caused, I sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." The words struck like thunder in the courtroom. Corey Harrison, the Pawn Stars star once known for his humor and charm, now faced the harshest of judgments. No more spotlight, no more applause, only bars and regret. That moment slammed shut any chance of redemption through freedom. Corey's fate was now sealed by the very choices he once prided himself on. As the judge delivered the sentence, Corey's family members, some present in the courtroom, could only exchange stunned glances. Rickharrison, who had built the pawn shop empire from nothing, now watched it crumble before his eyes. The weight of the moment bore down on everyone. No words could capture it. The Harrison family, once a symbol of resilience and success, now faced an irreparable tragedy. The media, once enamored with the Harrisons, now had an entirely different story to tell. Corey Harrison's fall from a beloved reality TV star to a convicted criminal was one of the most dramatic reversals in American television history. Fans who had watched Corey grow up through each episode now struggled to reconcile the truth. Fans who had watched Corey grow up through each episode now struggled to reconcile the truth. They couldn't align the image of the cheerful, witty young man with the criminal in handcuffs at the defendant's table. As the courtroom slowly emptied, a bitter reality settled in. It was the end of an era. The Harrison family, once a symbol of the American dream, had become an emblem of scandal and crime. Corey Harrison, poised to inherit an empire, would now spend the rest of his life behind bars. It was a stark warning of the cost of pursuing power through a path of corruption. Corey's sentence was not just the end for one man but a turning point in the family's saga. The beloved show, which once celebrated hard work and business savvy, was now at the center of a national criminal case. The spotlight was gone, leaving only the echo of infamy. Corey's arrest and conviction delivered a devastating blow to the Harrisons' public image. A reputation carefully built over years crumbled in mere weeks. The fallout from the trial extended beyond the legal realm. It struck at the hearts of those who had connected with the show. Fans who once saw Rick and Corey as embodiment of family values, resilience, and honesty were left with only disillusionment. They grappled with the reality that the people they admired harbored such dark truths. The public's perception of the Harrison family was forever altered. Corey's wit and charm, once his signature traits, were now tainted by the reality of his role in a sophisticated criminal organization. He was no longer the funny guy behind the counter, cracking jokes and making deals. Now he stood as a symbol of betrayal and collapse. The man who once made audiences laugh each week had become a stark warning about the corruption of power. His actions helped dismantle the empire Rick Harrison spent a lifetime building. The fallout for Rick Harrison cut even deeper. He wasn't just the founder but the face of Pawn Stars. Rick had guided viewers through journeys of value, history, and insight, turning a pawn shop into a cultural phenomenon that made his family beloved and renowned. But now that legacy was severely shaken. Rick, the devoted father and savvy businessman, faced a brutal truth. His own son, the one he had placed unwavering trust in, had pushed everything to the brink. Rick Harrison had lost so much, not just his reputation but his legacy. He had been a role model for entrepreneurs starting from nothing, a symbol of ambition and authenticity. The pawn shop wasn't just a business. It was a place where memories were made, bonding family across generations. From father to son, it was all captured on screen. But now that screen no longer broadcast laughter. It carried only the echo of a tragedy where trust was betrayed and ideals shattered by greed and wrong choices. Now his family was at the center of one of the most shocking scandals in recent memory. The public questioned, how much did Rick Harrison know about his son's involvement? Was he truly unaware or complicit in his silence? Illegal activities had unfolded under his nose for years. How could he not have suspected? As the investigation and trial unfolded, Rick maintained a stoic silence, refraining from defending his son. The pressure to speak weighed heavily, but Rick understood the gravity of the situation. One wrong word could destroy what little remained of his personal reputation. The FBI investigation cast a dark shadow over the entire Harrison family. Any attempt to downplay Corey's role risked being seen as a cover-up, further damaging Rick's already shaky credibility. Yet even in his silence, he couldn't escape the media's scrutiny. Articles, analyses, and commentary relentlessly targeted Rick. Many viewers began to question the role that network producers and show creators play in shaping the public image of reality TV stars. Were they complicit in building Harrison's brand without properly examining his business practices? Did the success of Pawn Stars blind the network to potential warning signs of Harrison's illegal activities? Some critics say the entertainment industry, in its pursuit of ratings and profits, has failed to investigate the truth behind its public image, allowing stars to thrive in the spotlight while engaging in criminal behavior behind the scenes. For the Harrison family, the public backlash was both immediate and intense. The fallout extended beyond the loss of their television show or their public reputation and extended to the personal lives of those involved. Rick Harrison, once a beloved figure on Pawn Stars, now found himself in the crosshairs of public scrutiny. Fans who once admired him for his business acumen and leadership now questioned his integrity. What did Rick know about his son's involvement in criminal activities? Was he complicit or unaware of the dark side of the family business? These questions loom large, and the lack of answers only adds to the public's distrust of the Harrison family. Rick remained silent throughout much of the scandal, but his silence did little to stem the tide of public criticism. The patriarch of the family, Rick was often seen as the moral compass of the business he built the pawn shop empire around. Many felt he should have known about the criminal activities taking place under his roof. While Rick did not face criminal enterprise charges, his public image was forever tarnished by his involvement in his son's crimes. Ultimately, The Harrison family scandal is not only a shocking event in the entertainment industry but also a great lesson about personal and community responsibility in the world of reality television. Questions about the involvement of TV stars and transparency in the entertainment industry will be discussed for a long time. Now more than ever, we need to be clear about what is happening behind the camera and ensure that those who have a great influence on the public are held accountable for their actions. If you care about justice and want this story to be known to more people, like and share to spread the information. Leave a comment so we can discuss and see the truth together. See you in the next videos.